Were you removed from your own company for fraud? That night, I stopped being a father.
The papers my own son slid across the table weren't a birthday card. They were legal transfer documents. Deeds, signatures, the kind that don't ask for permission. Just a pen. He didn't even look up when he said it. Just sign it, Dad. We both know this place won't run forever. And that's when I realized I wasn't his father anymore. I was just an obstacle. Before we continue, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you raised, someone you'd die for, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share your story in the comments. You're not alone, and neither was I. My name is Daniel Parker. I'm 58 years old. I live just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. If you've ever stood at the top of Mount Adams at night, you know what I mean when I say the whole city breathes beneath you. The lights scatter across the Ohio River like someone spilled diamonds on dark water. There's a hum in the air, bridges groaning under freight trucks, a boat horn downriver, the thrum of distant bar music floating through the dark. It's a city that taught me how to build, how to break, and how to rebuild again. I started Parker & Sons Contracting when I was 29. Just me, a rented Ford flatbed, and a roll of blueprints I barely understood. I still remember that first morning. Dew soaking through my boots, coffee burning my tongue, fear sitting heavy in my gut. I knocked on doors, shook hands with strangers, promised I could build anything they imagined. Some believed me, some didn't. But I learned fast. Sweat buys trust. Honesty keeps it. We built homes, rewired schools, patched roofs in the middle of Midwest storms. There were nights I slept in the truck outside a half-finished house because the client wanted the job done before winter. By the time I hit 50, we had 9 trucks, 24 workers, 3 warehouses, and 2 generations of sweat poured into every nail and beam. And I built it all with one person in mind, my son Travis. He was the kid with the clipboard before he could spell his name. Hard hat too big for his head, tagging along to job sites. I'd watch him scribble squiggly lines on blank paper, pretending to take notes like the grown-ups. He'd follow me everywhere, mud on his sneakers, peanut butter on his cheeks. Once, when he was 7, he asked me why nails were silver. I told him it's because they need to shine before they disappear into wood. He nodded like he'd just learned a secret about life. I used to think he watched me with admiration. Now I know it was calculation. It started small. A few purchases here and there with the company card. A luxury watch labeled Client Gift. Marketing charges from a firm in LA we'd never heard of. When I asked him, he laughed it off. Dad, I'm modernizing us. This is branding. Expansion. He always had the words. That was Travis's gift, and his curse. He could make greed sound like strategy. He could make betrayal sound like business. I wanted to believe him, so I did. Then came the meetings, private meetings. He started keeping the books himself to save time. Took calls in the office with the door locked. Started dressing like he was in a tech startup instead of a roofing firm. One morning, I walked into the office and saw our company sign had changed. Parker & Sons was now Travis Parker Developments. My name was still on the paperwork, but not on the building. I stood there longer than I should have. Sunlight caught the new letters, sleek chrome, modern font, the kind of branding he said we needed. It felt like someone had quietly erased me while I was standing in the room. I should have fought harder. But here's the thing about fathers. We don't always know when to stop protecting and start confronting. I still saw him as my boy. Still remembered the kid who cried when he broke my tape measure. Still thought, maybe, deep down, he respected me. Turns out respect had been traded for ambition a long time ago. The next red flag came in the form of a certified letter. It wasn't addressed to me, it was addressed about me. It was from a lawyer downtown, someone Travis had hired. Inside was a Proposed restructuring agreement. Fancy words for dad. I'm taking over everything. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, reading it 3 times. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My coffee went cold. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. I didn't say a word. Not that day. Not the next. But I made one quiet stop at a law office of my own. See, what Travis didn't know is that Parker and Sons was never under his name. The trucks, the properties, even the licenses were all filed through an S corp held by a trust with my name on every dotted line. He thought I was just the old man showing up late and slow. But the foundation of the company wasn't just built with hammers. It was built with strategy. And I wasn't done laying bricks. Over the next few weeks, I gathered bank statements, property tax receipts, pay stubs, vendor complaints, screenshots of emails he thought I'd never read. Every lie he'd told was now in a folder with tabs and timestamps. I kept it hidden in the glove box of my truck, under old invoices and a ratchet set. It felt like holding a weapon no one knew existed, but I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet, because something bigger was forming, something worse than the money, worse than the ego. It was personal now, and he was about to cross a line I didn't know I'd drawn. One Thursday morning, Travis called a team realignment meeting. He made me sit in the back of the warehouse, in front of my workers, guys I'd hired, trained, sweated with. The smell of sawdust and diesel hung in the air. He stood in front of them with a microphone and a PowerPoint. Talked about legacy fatigue. Said we were transitioning to next-gen leadership. Said, and I quote, "My father was a great starter, but times change, and we have to evolve." He didn't even look at me, and the worst part? Some of the younger crew nodded. I looked at the older guys, faces weathered by years of sun and shingles. They avoided my eyes, not because they didn't care, because they were caught in the awkward space between loyalty and paychecks. That night, I sat in my truck outside Skyline Chili. Didn't even eat. Just stared at the glow of the dashboard, wondering when I lost my place in my own story. The city hummed around me. Headlights streaked by. A faint smell of chili and onions drifted out from the restaurant door. I pulled out the folder from the glove box, the one with every document, every lie, every silent betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I just whispered to myself, time to finish what I started. 2 days later, I met with my lawyer again. We drafted a transfer, not of power, but of protection. I moved every asset into a shielded trust, with a clause that locked out any beneficiary involved in hostile legal action. The clause had a timestamp, and it retroactively included Travis's restructuring letter. Then we filed a quiet lien on the warehouse, under a different LLC, one he didn't know I owned. The beauty of silence is that people think it means surrender, but silence is where storms build, where hammers rise before they strike. He kept pushing, started selling off equipment to streamline, laid off 2 of my oldest workers, guys who'd been with me since drywall meant hammer and nails, not air guns and apps. Said they didn't fit the brand image. One of them cried when he left, said, "I thought this company was about people." I thought so too. Weeks passed. I didn't confront him, didn't yell, didn't flinch, but I documented everything, even the handshakes he thought were private, even the texts he left open when he walked away from his desk. He didn't notice I had installed a new camera in the office, one that sent clips to my phone. He was building the case against himself, and he didn't even know it. The final straw wasn't financial. It was a family dinner. Thanksgiving. Our whole extended family around the table. The smell of roasted turkey and sage stuffing filled the house. Cousins laughing, plates clinking, football murmuring from the living room. I carved the turkey, poured the wine, made the toast. Then during dessert, Travis stood and said, "Next year we'll host at my place. You've done enough, Dad. Time to pass the torch." Everyone clapped, but I saw it in his eyes. He wasn't inviting me into the next chapter. He was closing the book. And just like that, I made the decision. No more waiting. No more hoping. No more illusions. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I showed up at the office before sunrise. Same as always. Coffee in hand. Tool. Belt slung over my shoulder. But this time, I wasn't there to work. I was there to watch. Because now, every minute mattered. Every call, every purchase, every smug comment. It was all fuel for the fire I was about to light. The lot was still wrapped in early winter fog when I pulled in. Frost painted the edges of the chain-link fence, and my boots crunched on gravel that had frozen stiff overnight. The building lights were dark, except for a faint glow leaking from the break room. I sat in the truck for a while, engine humming low, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm. The quiet felt heavy, almost reverent. This was the battlefield now, not sawdust and steel, not sweat and nails, paperwork, numbers, silence. By 8 a.m., Travis rolled in driving a brand new black Escalade. It gleamed even in the weak morning light. Windows tinted, wheels polished so bright they threw back the pale sun like mirrors. Company tags. I didn't approve that lease. But I didn't ask. Just nodded and watched him walk past me like I was a stranger. His cologne lingered in the cold air long after the automatic door closed behind him. Sharp, expensive, not the smell of a man who's been on a job site in years. Inside, the office didn't feel like mine anymore. He'd started redecorating, tore down my old frame project photos, the ones showing real houses, real people, smiling as we handed them keys. In their place hung glossy stock images of skyscrapers we'd never even touched. Perfect blue skies, executives in suits shaking hands, the kind of pictures that say nothing but look important. The mission statement he'd printed and taped to the glass wall. Read in bold, cold font, efficiency, elevation, exit, velocity. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't know what the hell it meant, but I knew what it cost. It cost identity. It cost trust. It cost the soul of a company that used to mean something. That same week, I noticed vendors weren't responding to our invoices. First, it was a roofing supply company I'd worked with for 20 years. Then the electrical wholesaler. The silence was odd. When I called one of them, the owner hesitated, cleared his throat, then finally said, "Your son said we'd be switching to another distributor." He said, "Things are changing." Turns out Travis had started replacing suppliers. Cheaper materials, outsourced labor. He said he was cutting costs. But I saw the difference. Our shingles used to last decades. Now they felt thinner in my hands. Lumber that once came from reliable mills now had splintered edges and crooked grain. We were no longer building homes. We were assembling liabilities. He was building a paper tower, and it was going to collapse. One cold afternoon, I took a drive out to our west side lot, the place we used to keep overflow equipment. It used to store 3 of our trucks. Now there were 2. One of them sat on blocks, tires stripped, paint chipped where someone had pried off the Parker & Sons logo decal. Wind rattled through the empty cargo bed. The lot manager shuffled out of the small trailer, coffee in hand, face drawn. "Mornin', Dan," he said, awkward. I asked about the missing truck. He looked down, kicked at the gravel. "Travis said we were consolidating resources. Didn't say where it went." I nodded, but my gut already knew. 2 days later, after hours of digging through public records and business filings, I found it, listed under a new LLC in Travis's name, sold to himself, at a loss. I printed the report, 3 crisp pages, and brought it straight to my lawyer. We slid it into the thick growing binder labeled misappropriation. Internal. I wasn't just building a case anymore. I was building a weapon. That night, in the quiet of my kitchen, I found the receipt that broke me. It was crumpled in a pile of scanned expense reports my lawyer had flagged. A hotel in Miami, $4,382.48, 3 nights, charged to the company card, labeled as client development trip. I opened Instagram because curiosity is a dangerous, necessary thing, and there it was. Travis, poolside, margarita in hand, sunglasses reflecting endless blue sky. His caption, "Leveling up, legacy mode unlocked." Legacy. That was the word he kept using. To him, legacy meant ownership, control, a brand he could brag about at rooftop bars. To me, it meant sacrifice, the quiet kind nobody sees. I remember the time I missed his 8th grade football championship because I was up all night fixing the school's collapse roof so kids could have class the next morning. I remembered pawning my late wife's jewelry during the 2009 recession just to make payroll so my men could feed their families. I remembered winters where I kept an extra blanket in the truck because I couldn't afford to both heat the house and fill the gas tank for work the next day. That was the kind of legacy I built, brick by bloody brick. The next day, I sat in the back of a cold, echoing bank conference room. My lawyer sat beside me, calm but watchful. Documents were spread out across polished wood. Trust paperwork, property deeds, financial ledgers. The trust that held the company was airtight, but there was a new problem. Travis had started applying for fresh loans under the business name, which meant he was gambling with everything I'd spent my life protecting. Our credit, our insurance, our assets. He was stacking debt against a house he didn't build. I felt my jaw tighten, but I waited. Because patience isn't weakness, it's precision. And in 2 weeks, something important was happening. The annual shareholders review. The one meeting he couldn't cancel, couldn't fake, couldn't talk his way out of. He thought it was just a formality, a box to check, an old tradition to humor me. He had no idea it was the match waiting for the fuse. In the days leading up to it, Travis grew bolder. He started calling me Dan instead of Dad. The first time he said it, "Morning, Dan," I swear I felt the air shift, said it was more professional. He told the team I was stepping back for health reasons. Told investors I'd lost interest in the day-to-day. I showed up every day anyway. Smiled, nodded, let him think I was fading. Let him keep digging his own grave. One evening, I walked by his office door and found it cracked just enough. His voice carried out, smooth and smug. "Yeah, the old man's checked out. I've got full control now. We're liquidating some of the legacy equipment. He won't even notice. Hell, he still thinks we use paper invoices." I froze in the hallway, every instinct screaming to storm in and set him straight. But I didn't, because rage is loud and sloppy, and I needed quiet and sharp. I walked away before I did something I'd regret, because I didn't need to hit him. I just needed to wait. 2 nights before the shareholders' meeting, I picked up the phone and called an old friend, Larry Goodman. Larry and I started this business together, back when we were young enough to hang drywall ourselves. He left in 2009 after a stroke forced him into early retirement, but he still held 5% of the trust shares, quiet but powerful. He picked up on the second ring and said, before I even finished explaining, "Dan, I've been waiting for your call." He'd seen the signs from a distance too. Travis cutting corners, cutting people, turning something we built with sweat and grit into a hollow brand. "I'll be there," Larry said simply. That was all I needed. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early. Snow threatened but hadn't fallen yet. Sky a flat gray. Inside the conference room, the long oak table gleamed under fluorescent lights. I laid out my folders, checked the copies, felt the calm that comes when you know the work is done and the truth is about to walk into the room. Travis showed up last. Tailored suit, slim fit, navy blue, no tie, too casual, too confident, $800 loafers that squeaked on the polished floor. Behind him, 2 young guys from some slick consulting firm. They looked barely 30, smooth haircuts, sharp tablets. He introduced them as transition specialists. I nodded, shook their hands, offered them coffee. They smiled like kids who'd just been given permission to sit at the adult table. What they didn't know was that I'd already sent a certified packet to every shareholder, vendor, and senior team member 2 days before. Inside, a full report, signed affidavits, financial discrepancies, legal filings, receipts, photos, every quiet betrayal printed and tabbed. and most importantly, a motion to remove Travis from all decision-making authority. The meeting began with polite small talk. Travis took control quickly, his voice smooth, presentation slides glossy and fast. Buzzwords flew: synergy, streamlining, market disruption. 10 minutes in, he was mid-sentence about modernizing revenue channels. When I stood up, he paused, irritated. "Dad, do you mind?" "I'm just stretching," I said softly. Then I reached into my bag and opened a folder. One by one, I laid down the evidence: bank statements, loan applications, asset transfers, each page louder than a shout. The rustle of paper filled the room like thunder. Travis's voice cracked. "What? What is this?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. Let the silence speak for me. Let the proof speak for itself. Larry stood next, slower than he used to, but steady. "I co-signed the original business charter with Daniel," he said, voice rough but clear, "and I say it's time we protect what's left." Then 3 others nodded. The vote was swift, almost merciful in its quiet finality. Motion passed, effective immediately. Travis Parker was suspended from all operations pending legal review. For a long second he didn't move. His jaw tightened, color rising in his cheeks. Then he slammed his laptop shut, gathered his notes with shaking hands, and stormed out. Didn't say a word, but I saw it, the first flicker of fear in his eyes. And it wasn't over, because I wasn't just going to stop him. I was going to strip him bare. 2 days after the meeting, Travis came to my house, unannounced, no warning. He didn't knock, just barged in like it was still his kingdom. The door slammed against the wall, cold December air spilling in behind him. He stood in the doorway of the living room, jaw tight, chest heaving slightly like he'd rehearsed his anger on the drive over. His eyes were dark and sharp, the same eyes that once begged me to let him ride in the front seat when he was 6. "You're making a mistake," he said, low, controlled, but trembling under the surface. I stayed in my chair by the window, coffee cooling in my hands. Didn't answer, didn't move. I wanted him to fill the silence himself. He stepped forward until the hardwood creaked. "You think I'm the bad guy? I saved that company. You were running it into the ground." I finally looked up, met his stare without flinching, and said the first true sentence I'd said to him in weeks. "You didn't save it, you sold it." He blinked, then laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that bounced off the walls and made the house feel smaller. "You don't get it, do you? The world moved on, Dad. Nobody cares about loyalty anymore, or tools, or your damn legacy. This is about scale, exit strategy, growth." Growth, that word again, like it was holy, like greed could hide behind a prettier name. I studied him in the quiet that followed, his pressed coat, his polished boots, the faint smell of cologne that didn't belong to a man who ever scraped shingles off a roof. I didn't raise a monster, but I sure as hell enabled one. Before he left, he turned at the door, face shadowed by the pale light spilling from the porch. "You want to fight dirty, old man? Fine, but I know where the bodies are buried, too." The words hung in the air long after he was gone. That night, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about the company anymore. This was personal. And Travis wasn't going to play fair. 3 days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Official city seal stamped in the corner. A notice from the zoning department. Anonymous complaint filed against our western warehouse. Violations: improper zoning, hazardous storage, expired safety inspections. Funny thing is, those inspections were up to date 2 months ago. I'd signed the paperwork myself, watched the inspector walk the property, and sign off with his own pen. But now the files had gone missing. Online records deleted. I didn't need to guess who did it. Then came the IRS audit. Then the OSHA review, emails full of jargon and threats of penalties. Each one a new rock thrown through the windows of what I'd built. And finally, the real punch. Travis filed a motion to challenge the trust. Claimed I was mentally unfit. Said I'd forged signatures. Tried to have me removed as trustee, the one safeguard keeping the company from his hands. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the paperwork. The room smelled faintly of leather and old coffee. Rain streaked down the window behind him. My lawyer cleared his throat. "He's going nuclear," he said quietly. My son wasn't trying to win. He was trying to burn the whole thing down. If he couldn't have it, he'd destroy it. Destroy me. But here's what he didn't know. 2 weeks before that shareholders' meeting, I'd gone to the county clerk's office myself. Walked past the echoing marble floors, the fluorescent hum, the smell of dust and old files. Filed for a quiet title action on the company's primary property. Transferred the deed to a holding company under a different name, one that couldn't be connected to me unless you knew exactly what to look for. I'd also moved every dollar from the operating account into 3 new accounts, each tucked behind layered LLC structures, legal walls within walls. Even if he nuked the business, he'd be nuking an empty shell. And I had one more card, something he didn't know existed, a voicemail. It came from a vendor he'd tried to strong-arm into fake invoicing. He didn't know the man had called me, angry and scared, and left everything on record. Didn't know I'd passed it to my legal team. Didn't know it had already been quietly submitted in the fraud review tied to his motion. The day of the competency hearing arrived cold and gray. I walked into the courthouse with my lawyer at my side, the weight of a 2-inch thick binder in my hands. Years of work, months of quiet fury, neatly hole-punched and tabbed. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and stale air. Travis sat at the other table, slick suit, new attorney whispering in his ear. He didn't look at me. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, called the room to order. She looked at me first. "Mr. Parker, do you understand the nature of these proceedings?" I stood. My hands didn't shake. "I do, Your Honor, and I'd like to introduce something for the record." I stepped forward and handed the binder to the clerk. Inside, financial summaries, surveillance logs, email printouts, recorded vendor statements, legal affidavits, a full breakdown of every personal expense Travis had written off as company development. The clerk flipped pages. The quiet rustle felt deafening. The judge scanned the first few tabs, her brow tightening. Travis shifted in his chair. Color drained from his face. His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically. The judge looked up after a long silence. "Mr. Parker," she said, turning to Travis now, "this filing borders on abusive litigation. Motion to remove trustee is denied and dismissed with prejudice. Any further frivolous action could result in sanctions." Just like that, it was over. At least legally, but not emotionally. When the gavel struck, the sound echoed like finality. People stood, papers rustling, shoes squeaking on polished floors. I stayed still for a second, staring at my hands. Travis walked right past me. Didn't say a word, but in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Not hate, not fear, shame. The kind that crawls up your spine when you realize you've lost everything by your own hand. For the first time since this war began, I almost pitied him. Almost. Later that week, my phone buzzed. A text. "Let's talk." I didn't answer. Then a call. I let it go to voicemail. His voice, hesitant, played back through the speaker. "I was stupid. I messed up. I thought you didn't trust me. I thought I had to take it." No apology. Just excuses. Just a man trying to rewrite the story so he's not the villain. That's the thing with people like Travis. They think betrayal is just a transaction, a business move. They forget betrayal has cost. Real, human cost. And then came the final twist. One I hadn't seen coming. I was alone in the old warehouse office a week later, cleaning out drawers we hadn't touched in years. Dust floated in thin beams of winter light. The air smelled like old plywood and motor oil. I slid open the bottom drawer of an ancient metal file cabinet and found a thick manila envelope. No label. Just my name scrawled in handwriting I hadn't seen in so long it stopped me cold. My wife's handwriting, I hadn't seen it since she passed. Hands trembling, I opened the flap. Inside, A single folded letter, yellowed slightly at the edges, dated 6 years ago, addressed to me. I sat down hard on the old rolling chair, the one that squeaks when you lean back. For a long moment I couldn't open it, could barely breathe. Then I did. Her voice came alive in my head as my eyes traced each word. If you're reading this, it means the company's still standing, and so are you. But I worry about Travis. I see what you can't. He's smart, Dan, but he's watching too much and learning too little. Please don't let him take what you built. Not until he earns it, and not until he learns what it cost you. She signed it the way she always did. Love always. M. I sat there for a long time, silent. My chest felt like someone had driven a nail straight through. Even from the grave, she'd seen it coming. She'd seen him more clearly than I had. Tears burned hot in my eyes, but didn't fall. I just let the ache wash through me. Grief, regret, something like relief that at least one person had understood. That night, I made my final decision. I wasn't going to rebuild for Travis. I was going to rebuild for myself. Rebirth starts small. I called the branding guy I'd once hired for a single project and told him I needed a new identity. New name, Foundry Contracting. New logo, strong, simple, built like the steel beams we used to raise. New trucks, clean white with deep gray lettering, same values. I called back the 2 old workers Travis had fired. Both men sounded stunned on the phone. One went quiet so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, voice breaking, "You really want me back?" "Yeah," I said, "with a raise and a promise. You'll have a job here as long as you want one." The next week, I walked the new trucks into our lot myself. It felt like breathing again. No buzzwords, no smoke and mirrors, just honest tools and honest work. We didn't start big, just one house at a time, then another. Slow, steady, real, but it was ours again. And Travis? He left the city, packed up and moved west. Tried to start something new. Another company. Another dream built on borrowed charm. But the word followed him. Vendors talk. So do banks. So do courts. You can't outrun a reputation when you wrote it in ink. 2 months passed. Not a word from Travis. The dust had mostly settled. The court battle was over. The company was breathing again, and I was finally sleeping through the night, something I hadn't done in years. For the first time in forever, mornings were quiet. No emergency calls. No threats disguised as emails. Just coffee steaming on the porch as winter light crept across the yard. Sometimes I'd catch myself exhaling and realize I hadn't taken a full deep breath in months. But then the letter came. It wasn't from him. It was from a law firm in San Diego, sleek embossed logo in the corner, thick paper that smelled faintly of ink and arrogance. Inside, a business proposal, or more accurately, a plea. Travis had started a new company, Parker Innovations LLC. Same name game, different coast, different mask, same man. But this time he was looking for investors, and to do that, he needed a letter of endorsement from a previous business associate. He had listed me. My hand gripped the paper so hard it creased. For a moment I just stared at it, stunned, quiet. This boy, this man, this fraud, had burned my name to the ground, and now he wanted to use my ashes to build a castle. I didn't respond, but I didn't forget, because this wasn't just arrogance. This was invitation, a second chance to finish what I started. A week later, I picked up the phone and called an old friend of mine in California, Terry Griggs, real estate guy, small cap investor, knows every whisper in those tech-adjacent circles. He answered on the second ring, voice warm but curious. "Dan, been a while." I told him everything, every dollar, every deception, every document. I didn't hold back. I painted the whole picture. Travis's takeover, the lawsuits, the fraud, the court fight. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Finally, Terry said, low and even, "What do you want me to do?" "Just get me in the room." He chuckled once, dry. Dan, I can do better than that. 2 days later, he called back with details. Parker Innovations was hosting a private investor pitch at a rented conference suite in downtown San Diego. Closed door, invite only. 20 attendees, 12 serious prospects, one father with a storm in his chest. You're on the list, Terry said. Play it how you want. I'll keep my mouth shut. I thanked him quietly, hung up, sat there a long time staring at nothing. This wasn't just business anymore. It was a reckoning. I flew out the night before. No fancy hotel, just a $60 roadside motel, with humming neon and carpet that smelled faintly of bleach. I slept 4 hours. Didn't need more. My bag held nothing but jeans, a clean shirt, the thick file of records, and a quiet, simmering purpose. Morning broke pale and cool. The city smelled like salt and car exhaust. I walked to the venue early. My boots hit the pavement steady and calm. When I walked into that conference suite, Travis didn't recognize me at first. Rows of sleek chairs faced a projector screen, coffee stations in the back. Investors milled about with iPads and lattes. I blended in, jeans, worn boots, old leather belt, steel eyes, no name tag, no suit, just me. He stood at the front, adjusting slides on a rented projector. Hair perfectly styled, navy blazer fitted sharp. His smile flickered as he scanned the room, landing briefly on me without recognition. Then he began. His voice was smooth, polished from practice. His deck slick with graphics and buzzwords. His story unrecognizable. He talked about his experience running a successful construction firm in Ohio, about overcoming adversity when his father fell ill, about shouldering the company through a generational handoff. The room nodded. Investors scribbled notes, eyes bright with dollar signs. Someone even murmured, "Impressive." I felt my blood simmer under my ribs, slow and steady. But I didn't stand, not yet, because justice is timing, and revenge is best served notarized. At the end of his pitch, Travis opened the floor to questions. Confident, smiling, I raised my hand. For the first time, he really looked at me. Recognition hit like a car crash. His smile cracked. Yes, sir? I stood, calm, quiet, hands folded behind my back. You mentioned your previous company, Parker & Sons, correct? He hesitated. Yes. Can you tell us about the ownership structure of that business? A long blink. I was lead operator. It was a family business. Were you an owner? Pause. No, but... I cut him off gently, voice steady. Were you removed from that business by legal injunction due to breach of fiduciary responsibility? Gasps scattered the room like glass shattering. Pens stopped moving. Travis went pale. Sir, I don't think this is the... Were you sued by your own father? Silence thickened the air. Even the hum of the projector seemed to fade. One investor leaned forward. Is that true? Another quietly unlocked his phone, typing fast. I reached into my bag and pulled out the bound file. This, I said, voice still calm, is a certified record of litigation, including court decisions, financial findings, and fraud determinations against Mr. Parker during his time at Parker & Sons, dated, signed, and available for verification. I let it land on the table with a heavy, satisfying thud. Then I looked him in the eye and said the words I'd waited to say. I'm Daniel Parker, founder of Parker & Sons, the man whose name he's still trying to sell. You could hear the breath leave the room. Travis didn't say a word, didn't move, didn't blink. He just stood there, frozen in the spotlight he had built, now burning him alive. One by one, investors stood, shook their heads. Some left quietly. One, older and sharper than the rest, turned on his heel and said flatly, This is a fraud pitch. You could be federally liable. The moderator's face had gone ashen. He cleared his throat, stammered something about ending the session early, and just like that, the pitch was over. I gathered my file, slid it back into my bag, and walked out without looking back. The hallway outside smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. I exhaled, slow and steady, years of weight slipping from my shoulders with each step. That night, I took the long way to the airport. Highway lights flickered past as the Pacific breeze swept in through the open window. The city stretched out in glass and neon, full of ambition and hungry deals. I looked at it once, just once, and felt nothing but release. My son had tried to own the skyline, but you can't build a future on stolen bones. The next morning, my phone buzzed as I sat at the gate waiting to board. Voicemail. Mr. Parker, this is Alan Nichols. Counsel for your son. He's requested a mediated sit-down. He's reconsidering everything. He's asking for help. I listened, then deleted the message. He wasn't asking for help. He was asking for rescue. But I wasn't in that business anymore. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived. No lawyer this time. No printed stationery. Just plain white paper and his familiar, uneven handwriting. I opened it slowly, almost bracing myself. Dad, I messed up. I thought I was smarter than I was. I know I've ruined things, maybe permanently, but I'm still your son. If there's anything left in you, just call. Even if you just want to curse me out, I deserve it. I read it twice, sat with it for a long time. No apology. Just regret dressed as explanation. Just a man trying to find the bridge after setting fire to both ends. I didn't respond, not to punish him, not to prove a point, but because the truth is, some bridges don't burn. They rot from the inside out until there's nothing left to walk across. A week passed, then two. No word from him, no phone call, no letter, not even a petty email, and for the first time in nearly a year, I didn't wake up waiting for the next shoe to drop, because there weren't any shoes left, not for him, and not for me. I'd spent decades building something meant to outlast me, but I never realized I was trying to build a son, not just a company. When Travis turned away, he didn't just walk out of a business. He walked out of my story, and in the quiet that followed, I started writing a new one. Foundry contracting was small, no billboards, no drone footage, no pitch decks, just a few good men, some honest jobs, and a truck that still smelled like sawdust and coffee. We rebuilt a church roof in Covington that first month. The old shingles had curled like dry leaves, and the pastor kept apologizing that the congregation couldn't pay much. I waved him off. We'll make it work. And we did. The look on the congregation's faces that Sunday, umbrellas closed, heads dry under a roof that didn't leak, was worth more than any investor handshake. Then we patched up a widow's porch for free. She made us lemonade in mason jars and sat quietly while we hammered, her late husband's rocking chair creaking behind her. At lunch, one of my guys asked if this was smart business. I just smiled. Smart enough. Last month, we took on a remodel near downtown, same narrow street where I once taught Travis how to drive stick. I remember that day so clearly, his hands too small for the gear shift, stalling out 3 times before laughing and saying, "I'll get it, Dad." Standing there decades later, watching my crew measure trim and cut beams, it felt like coming full circle. Except this. Time. The wheel was mine again. Life got quieter in a good way. The phone still rang, but it was customers asking for quotes, not lawyers serving papers. Paychecks cleared. Suppliers smiled when they saw me walk through the door. No whispers, no doubt, just work. Some nights I still drive up Mount Adams, park the truck, turn off the engine. I sit there in the hum of the city. The wind off the Ohio River slides through the cab, cool and smelling faintly of water and diesel. Bridge lights flicker on the dark surface below like scattered memories trying to shine through. I can see the skyline, sharp towers and soft street lamps, and somewhere in it, every choice I ever made. Sometimes I think about what could have been, what should have been. I picture Travis beside me on one of these drives, laughing, sharing plans, carrying the business forward with pride. Then I remember what was is enough. I built something honest. I protected it when it mattered. I survived the storm. He called again last month, unknown number at first, but I knew the area code. I let it ring until it stopped. He texted once. After that, "Happy birthday." I stared at the screen for a long time. Thumb hovered over the keyboard, then fell back to my lap. I closed the message without replying. Some things don't need a reply, because forgiveness doesn't always mean a second chance. Sometimes it just means you stop letting someone live in your head, and that was enough. The warehouse? I sold it. The one Travis tried to claim, the one that held so many ghosts. Watched the new owner sign papers and felt no sting, just relief. I used the money to buy a quiet plot of land on the edge of town, nothing fancy. Big enough for a workshop, a few trucks, a gravel lot. No glass offices, no polished boardrooms, just a space where honest work could breathe again. We're building the shop ourselves. Morning light catches the steel frame as we weld and measure. Sometimes I pause, look at the beams going up, smell the hot metal and wood dust, and feel something I hadn't in years. Peace. The deed's in my name. And this time, there's no backup beneficiary. No loopholes. No silent betrayals hiding in the fine print. I'm not a man of many words. Never have been. But if I could go back and say one thing to my younger self, the kid who thought fatherhood was just about sacrifice, it would be this. Loyalty isn't what you give, it's what people earn. And not everyone deserves a seat at your table just because they share your blood. I would have told myself that loving your child doesn't mean surrendering everything you are. That respect is built both ways. That sometimes the hardest, most loving thing you can do is draw a line and keep it. As for Travis, he'll land somewhere. Guys like him always do. There's always another pitch deck, another city, another set of strangers willing to believe the story until they learn the truth. But wherever he ends up, he'll know one thing. He'll know that the man he tried to bury was already standing on higher ground. He'll know I survived without him. He'll know the empire he tried to hijack didn't define me, because I rebuilt, smaller but stronger, on my own terms. And maybe, just maybe, that knowledge will burn enough to teach him what he refused to learn when he still had my trust. And me? I've got my boots on, the road humming under the tires, the skyline in my rear view, and the sun climbing just above the hills. Some journeys don't need maps, just resolve and silence. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.